Okay. Are we good?
Good.
Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go back to my slide. So, okay, that was the first thing I wanted to share with you, like cool thing that we did this summer. Um, Now let's see, share this and full screen. Okay. Yeah.
I assumed those teeth were AI. That's funny. I was like, that can't be real. That must be AI.
Well, it's now okay, technically, morphologically, that is probably some fantastical thing. But why would this matter? Even making something that is inaccurate, unreliable, untruthful. Imagine an art student, maybe a painter or a photographer, and they're like, wow, man, this thing is really cool, but what happens a lot with artists is they'll start in one medium and then they realize that what they need to make is in a completely different medium. So they have to retool themselves and, learn some new stuff. So I can imagine a young art student having like a sketch they did or a picture they took and they're like, oh, I think I want to make this into a sculpture. And doing an image to 3D model is a really fast way for them to try out an idea. So that's something that I think is a really important part of the future arsenal for young artists and old artists. Um, okay, yeah. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is this is some really bad AI video. But the thing that was cool was it's okay. One, as an artist, I don't care that it's bad. I'm actually interested in how it fails. Like artists are, what'll happen is like animated GIFs came out in whatever, 1988 or somewhere in there, 1990. And everybody's like, oh, animated GIFs are like horrible. But then there's a whole generation of kids in the 2000s that were like, the artifacts are what make it unique. And they started to use that as a vocabulary to do other stuff. And some of it was ironic and some of it was heartfelt. But animated GIFs, I think, are the first really native art form to the internet. So again, with like generative AI, if you do, there's a lot of stuff that's garbage or weird or it's out of control. But for artists, they're like, this is inspiration. This is the jumping off point to something else. Now, the reason why I show all these clips, I'm taking a film class right now with my favorite filmmaker who's alive, and he's like teaching this class from his couch in Winnipeg, Canada. And he gave us an assignment, and I'm like, okay, I need some clips. And so I generated all this stuff. If I tried to do one of these clips, these are each about 30 frames. If I tried to do 30 frames locally on my laptop, it would take about 3 hours. So that times about 50 little clips I have here. Thanks to the good graces and good services of RTS and Dwanel, who was funded by Ryan, um, I could do each of these in about 2 minutes. So again, for an artist to be able to have that, to be able to iterate that quickly, you're trying out a model. Does it work? Does it give me a result I like? What parameters can I tweak? In order to do all that tweaking and learning, you can't wait 3 hours. An art student can't wait 3 hours for that. You need to be able to crank through this stuff pretty quickly so you can, oh, let me tweak this parameter. So it's another little thing that we did this summer. Now, we are going to switch gears. Dwano he's going to present something. I'm going to mute myself in a second, but I just want to give a little background to this. There was a GW Coders meeting a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where Ryan presented, hey, I got Olama or somebody to talk to my Google spreadsheet. And so I could have 3 or 4 columns in the spreadsheet where I put in some prefab stuff and maybe one of the columns is different every time. And then once I hit go, there's a round trip to an LLM, and then the result comes back into the last column. So there could be a spreadsheet that has many rows with different things going on, and then the results are always in the last column. That was a light bulb moment for me because one of the problems I have as an artist is, okay, I'm getting really crazy with stable diffusion and I'm generating hundreds of images and I'm not keeping track of like what were the parameters I used, what were the prompts that I used. Gosh, it would be really nice if I just had a spreadsheet where I could type in the prompt and then the result goes into the next cell over. So What Ryan had done was purely with text and a llama. We wanted to work with a diffusion model and get an image back in. And Dwanel maybe has solved that problem. Let's find out. Let me see. I gotta escape out of here and I'm going to mute my.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Dwanil. I will share you a link of that Google Sheet. And so this Google Sheet works like this. Let me share this.
Can I go ahead and put the link in? I'll just copy and paste it in.
Yeah. Yes. So this is a Google Sheet. If I have to write a prompt and it will just run automatically and give you an image. So the process of this is like this. So the prompt goes into a Python script. This Python script transfers that prompt to Comfy UI, and that Comfy UI has a workflow in JSON format. So the Python code runs that JSON format in Comfy UI, and the Comfy UI generates an image like this. Now, after generating that image, the Comfy UI will does not have any storage where this image can be stored. It has a local folder Comfy UI, but it's on the Pegasus, and other users does not have access to Pegasus, so they can't see the image. Right? So the solution to that, I used AWS to host that image into a server, and now anyone can see that image. So you can try that right now. Uh, you can write a prompt and it will automatically generate the image and the workflow will run automatically.
So I don't think anybody can hear me, but yes, anybody who's online, you can actually go to that link and put in a prompt and see what happens. It's live. I've got a whole list of prompts that I have in my back pocket. So if I can find it, I'm gonna drop one in.
Yes. And I can show you how it works in terminal. So this is the terminal for Comfy UI, this one. And this is the terminal for Python script. So the Python script will fetch the prompt and then it will transfer it to Comfy UI. As you can see, there is one model already loading, which is being processed here, right? Processing. After it is completed, it will display done.
So how are you sending the spreadsheet to the Python?
So
using?
Here there is a status in which I will write pending, and that will trigger the Python script and it will take the input.
But that resides in the JavaScript,
No,
Google script.
Google script.
So I guess
So-
open to Google script. That's what I want to see.
Okay.
So I was curious about how you were gonna move things out.
Yes. So I used your concept only of
Okay.
getting the prompts in the Google Sheet and then just transfer that prompts to the Python script.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing down there.
Yes. And
Oh, and since we're recording, be sure to change your API.
it's all
after
right.
this.
So it's an iterative loop. Once it done one image, it will go to another, then another, like that. So I have asked RTS about making the Python script automated because I have to run it in my device to get all of you users to run it.
So this is running then on one of the super chip.
Yes.
Okay, they're dedicating it to you for the time being. Okay,
We had to steal a node from you.
oh, that's fine. For everyone's use. Mine aren't in a hurry. I'm just in queue for a whole bunch of things.
Right. Well, you're doing, I don't know, I feel like you're doing serious work and I'm still playing.
No, don't worry. It's not that serious. It's just a lot of data. So could you set it so that once someone puts anything into the cell in whatever column that is, any prompt, then it automatically puts pending into the cell next to it? Like once cell C14 is filled with any content,
Yes.
then D14 becomes pending. Then you wouldn't have to type it in.
So I have to write the pending status because I don't know if the prompt is complete or not. And if someone writes hi, then
Yeah.
it will take a hi as a
Yeah,
prompt.
that's true.
So
Could you have a separate, sorry to just jump in, could you have a
and
separate
it will
column?
change the pending to processing and then done. So while it's processing the image and generating the image, it will say processing, as we can see here. This fifth row is processing and this is also processing. And after that, it will generate a link like this. I have already run it, but I'm trying to show you here. It is running again. So, yes. And it doesn't matter which row you write, it will only trigger a pending status and it will just take the uh, prompt that has a status of pending. Yes. Someone said.
We have a panda riding 18th century horse. So what is actually generating the image? What model?
So in Comfy UI, I'm using SD3 clip model.
Okay.
This model is generating the image from a prompt. I can do same thing for image to videos and image to 2D image to 3D models, but I was not having much time.
But most of these there's several models that are at work in the workflow. Like there'll be the clip, which is essentially handling the text prompt, like translating that into something that's a little more useful for a diffusion model. But then there's a separate diffusion model that's really doing the basically back propagation for noise.
Yeah.
So, and then there's probably, like I've seen, there was one I was working on the other day that has like 4 models that have to be loaded into it to run. So these workflows get kind of complicated, and I'll show some examples of that. Maybe we'll just, I don't know, should we wait for another minute on this?
Yes,
Or we can come back to it also.
I think it's done.
I'm actually surprised. This is a little pokier than usual.
Yes.
Maybe because there are a number of prompts, maybe it just wants one.
Right. I don't know. Do you think it's a queuing issue?
Yeah, it's done. See, the prompt was executed and now you can see the status would change to done. And you can see an image here if I reload this. Yes. and you can see this here.
I guess the good thing about it too is you could queue up a whole bunch of prompts
Yes.
and go have dinner
Yeah.
and come back and it's all done,
Totally.
which is much better than. Oh.
So,
I'll just be standing.
Tuano, can you turn off your mic and I'm gonna give it a little bit
Yes.
share now. We'll come back to this. Okay, we'll come back to we'll let it run a little bit more and come back just a little while later. But I wanted to so I've shown you guys sort of the cool fun stuff. The reason why I did that is because I did a presentation of this to my colleagues at the Corcorran about the middle of the summer, which is the worst possible time because they're all away and they don't care. They're just like, whatever, I'm not going to watch 45 minutes of James talking. But I also shared it with a person who is a mentor of mine, who's super, I mean, he's brilliant. I worship him. He was my mentor. And I shared it with him and he looked at it and he was like, James, this is terrible. He really took me to task. And he said, look, you got to start with the cool stuff first to get people invested in it. So I have started with the cool stuff, but now I want to talk a little bit about the background for this and why this is important to me, and hopefully it's I don't know, maybe it's interesting to you guys. So what we did is early in the summer, I had this idea. There are a bunch of tools that my students do not have access to through authorized GW AI products. And yet there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening that I want them to have exposure to and to be able to experiment with and to be able to do it safely. So originally, when we started this, there were a few ideas of how we could proceed, but pretty quickly, I think within a week or so, we realized that Comfy UI, which I'll explain what that is. Dwanel mentioned it. Comfy UI is essentially an environment for building AI workflows, and it's very graphical. So this is an example of like the most basic like image generator in Comfy UI. So essentially, each of those nodes is just it's a little Python. And there's some nodes for your text prompts, your negative prompts. Then it gets to the K sampler and there's lots of parameters there. And then, there's encoding and decoding. And then at the end, it saves out an image. And for example, that save image node, like there's much more, there are other versions of save image that are much more detailed and open up more parameters for like how you want to save it, how you want to do the file naming conventions that, it's sequential and so on. Most of the tools that we have right now through the university, it's just like Copilot, put in a text prompt, you get an image, done. You can't go in and control like the CFG. There are certain parameters that you just have it's shrink wrapped. You get what you get out of the box. You can keep playing with the prompt, but there aren't a whole lot of opportunities to like tinker with the technology. Additionally, this is great. Like this kind of view of this workflow is great. So if I'm talking to a student, who's probably a visual person, instead of looking at like a long line of code, you guys would probably be like, yeah, this is the best way to look at it. But for me and my students, like seeing like these different parts and understanding how they thread together in a visual way is super useful. This is actually a screen grab from the workflow for doing the image to 3D model. So these things are all customizable. You can add in nodes. There's a whole sort of marketplace of custom nodes that do different things. So that opens up lots of really interesting possibilities. Also, from just a pedagogical standpoint, I can do like you can have nodes that are just nodes, essentially comments, like you guys would use comments, and here we've got comment nodes. And this is great. So if I show a student a workflow, I can actually explain, like, by the way, this parameter is one that is maybe fruitful to explore, and this is what the range of the parameter is, and some explanation of what it's doing. So like this is baked into the model. And if I share this with a student and I don't happen to be around, they've got some reference material right there. So again, that may seem trivial, but from a teaching perspective, like, holy cow, this is awesome. It's super simple and it's great. I just threw in this last slide. There was one other project that I'm going to tell you about that we have not brought to fruition, but a thing that we're working on is voice cloning. Now, voice cloning that's a dicey thing because you don't want to do identity theft. But here's a use case that I'm trying to solve. I have a former student, graduate alumni, was teaching briefly. Age 27, has a massive brain bleed, and now he's got a serious aphasia where he survived. He's doing great. He's exhibiting, like, he's showing more than I am out in the world. Like he's doing great. But when he's asked to give a talk about his work, his speech is completely shot. So typically with voice cloning, if you use a service, which you go onto the web and you pay some money, and it has a script that you read, and then it compares your spoken words to the script. That's how it trains on your voice. How do you give a arbitrary script to someone who can't speak anymore to create their voice? Well, it turns out that there's several hours of recordings from when Andrew was teaching. So we've got his voice. I can transcribe what he was saying. And the idea is there's a custom system where I can say, here are the words, here's the actual audio file, now generate a synthetic voice for him. We're close. I was working on it this weekend. It's not quite there, but I believe this is an eminently doable thing. And I think there's a use case that's like a really valid use case that's not identity theft. It's like we're giving this person some additional capability. I mean, just for example, he had a show at Northern Virginia Community College last fall, I think, and he was asked to come in and do a talk and explain how he's doing very tech-based work, 3D scanning and modeling, and he was asked to explain to the students how he was doing what he was doing. So he had the slide deck, and we got just the voice synthesizer on my computer. We just like took his text and made these, Stephen Hawking sounding, you know, things that he could play with the slides. So, but I know we can do better. So voice cloning is kind of that's one of the things we're still thinking about. Now, this all happened because Glenn and Joe and all the other folks in RTS have given me access and advice and help. And so like, this is like, I have immense gratitude to those guys. It was actually Glenn who invited me to my first GW Coders meeting. So, just, I got to give some props to those guys.
Big time.
Yeah. We see you, Glenn. As he leans back, like, I'm going to sneak out. Okay. I also have immense gratitude to Ryan because Ryan was, he had, I think in March or April, had said, hey, if anybody's doing any interesting projects with students using large language models, which I'm sort of borderline on that, I can get some funding. And so that's how we got Dwanel, who's been an awesome thought partner for me, helping me, sort of work through, because again, I can sort of put the ideas together, but like, what do I put in the terminal now? What's the Unix for this? Dwanel's been super patient with me, like the patience of a saint. So yeah, I talked a little bit about why we, how it happened and what's going on with Comfy UI, why we use Comfy UI. The bigger picture is, yeah, I'm an artist. I work with all these tools and media. I also want to teach this stuff. The tools need to be faster than my students' laptops. Hence, Superchip, Pegasus, yay, cool. Needs to be cheap. Like a lot of these things that I'm doing, there are services online that you can go to. Runway ML is one of them. There are online versions of Comfy UI that you can, pay a fee to a monthly subscription to have access to. Most of my students are broke. The art students are especially broke. And I feel like, why can't the university offer up this kind of thing? It needs to be safe. I want to make sure this is like totally sandboxed in so they're not accidentally releasing anything sensitive into the wild. And it needs to be deep. So the stuff that GW offers right now for art students is minimal. And by deep, I mean we need to be able to play with parameters and have more different kinds of models and so on. And just as an example, what the university currently gives us is like, yeah, we can do text to images. Probably Adobe Audition has a little bit of AI stuff in it, but video and like audio and video probably will come pretty quickly, like maybe by the end of the year. 3D models, who knows when that'll get surfaced through Adobe to art students. But so we don't have a whole lot to work with. And I'm just going to skip past this stuff. This is a little bit about the safety. I'll just mention also, so Colonial One, I used to be on a team with Glenn like 10 years ago. Our team had like a lunch and learn once a month, and Glenn did lunch and learn. He was like, yeah, we've got this thing, Colonial One. And by the way, most of the people that are using it are not taking advantage of the GPUs. Their code is just not, they're losing out. And immediately I was thinking, that kind of power, a lot of the stuff that the art students and interior architecture students do, it's like rendering video fly-throughs. That's takes a certain amount of power. Could we use, Colonial One? Could we stand up some sort of front end on Colonial One that could process video files? Now, the one thing that we're doing, that Dwanel and I have been doing that's a little sketchy maybe with respect to the HPC is we're using OOD, Open on Demand. And this was another light bulb moment that Jake Messick actually, he's onboarding us in May or the beginning of June. And he's like, well, really you should just run all your jobs through Slurm and it goes into the queue and it sits there and then it runs. And then someday you go and check your email and it's done and you download your stuff. Because of the things we're trying to do, we really wanted something more like a virtual machine. And OOD essentially allows us to get into Slurm, and then Slurm launches, it gives us a window to launch a virtual machine on HPC. And so that's how we're doing what we're doing. And typically for art students, it's like, or an artist, you have a work session. You go in, you mess around with your paints, you make, push colored mud around a canvas, and you spend about 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours doing that. And then at a certain point, it's like, okay, I need to reset my brain and move on to the next thing. You have like a few hours of like good creative juice, and then you got to take a break. So it's like, okay, we can do these things on the HPC. We're pushing it in ways that HPC was not intended for. I don't think OOD really was like the intention of HPC. So again, I'm very super grateful to RTS for letting us do this. Blah, blah, blah. What else? Yeah, and the reason why, OOD on the HPC is because we do have the Aporto virtual machines, but we can't, first of all, they're not as powerful as the HPC machines. And second of all, we can't load software onto them. They're sort of locked in. So we needed something where we can add bits and pieces as we go, add new models, for example. Yeah, and this was the original sort of like when we were thinking about this, like possible things we could do. Comfy UI was one, Music Gen is another, Google Sheet logging, that's another. We've done 2 out of 3, almost by accident. Yeah, but we really focused on Comfy UI. And just to give you guys a sense of like how much better it is. I mean, this room is not going to be surprised, but I was sort of tracking with the seal tooth, running that workflow on my MacBook Pro, which is it's not wimpy, but it was, about 200 seconds. We tried a bunch of different things. We tried Cerberus. There was a HP workstation that Glenn had just sort of plugged in on a desk somewhere that wasn't getting used, and he let us use that. But once we got to super chip, it's like a quarter of the time to run that particular workflow. And I'm sure there are other workflows that are even like the video workflow is even more dramatic. It's like 3 hours to 2 minutes, something like that. So, and sort of a caveat to all this is what we are not doing is a comprehensive survey of what models work. What we're really trying to do is find the environment where we can try lots of models to figure that out, and users can figure out for themselves which model works best for my particular need. So yeah, the requirements for this are a decent network connection, an HPC account, VPN, a 3-button mouse, and persistence. That's what I told my colleagues at the Corcorran, and I've just gotten crickets from them. I think as soon as we got to HPC account, yeah, it's been challenging. But what I'm anticipating is that like in 6 months and a year, people are gonna be like, oh, James knows how to do X. How can we? They don't want anything yet. They don't know what they want yet, but there will be a moment where they do, and I will be prepared to like start offering up options to those guys. And I will just mention my last slide is we have a GitHub over here that's Dwanel and I have been documenting what we're doing as we're going. There's one whole, it's mostly markdown files of just like this is the set of steps. James needs to remember what's the link to get to OOD. It's in there. So and we'll continue to add documentation as we go. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to see, I think I've got the spreadsheet open. There it is. I think that's it. Let's see, did we get any? Oh, here we go. We got another one, Unicorn on Mars. That's a fairly standard test image. Okay. So this particular workflow may not be the fastest. I can definitely crank out these images much faster on Stable Diffusion locally on my laptop. Not sure what's happening there, but the point is we have now wired together Ryan's idea with my dream world. That's all I got. Thanks for everybody who has helped support all this. Should I switch back to you?
No, see if anyone has questions.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You have on your wish list
Uh-huh.
audio generation?
Yep.
We were talking yesterday about video to audio.
Yep.
generation. So your interpretive dance now can have a soundtrack.
You do interpretive dance too?
He's trying to.
Having taught digital media for 35 years now, having done presentations, like PowerPoint presentations or whatever to live audiences, and having had every possible technical failure, I usually every time I do a talk, it's like there's my laptop, there's a backup of the presentation in Keynote or Word or whatever I'm using in Box or Drive somewhere. There's also a backup of it in all those formats plus PDF in a thumb drive in my back pocket. And then there's an interpretive dance. If all else fails, I need to be able to tell the story. I need to know it well enough that I can tell the story with gestures and so yeah, that's okay, let's see. I think there are a couple of people that had hands up, and I'm going to stop sharing this for a second so I can see. Glenn, I think you had your hand up, and I'm not sure how to unmute you. Maybe you can unmute yourself,
Oh, yeah, I can unmute myself for sure.
but I still can't hear you.
Really? How about now? How about now?
Oh,
How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, this was actually this is pretty amazing. So I'm curious about the I wanted to go back to maybe have a technical question or two about the clips that you made that you said were taking what were you saying? They were taking about 30 minutes on your laptop. What was it? And about 2 minutes on was it the Grace Hoppers? And so did I get that right? Was it a speed up of about what were we starting at, like 30 minutes?
3 hours.
Oh, I see. And what was that a was that a MPS? Was that Apple Silicon, or was that okay? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. There's this is amazing work, James, as always.
Yeah, I'm just switching. We're switching speakers and mics. Okay. I think somebody else had a question, maybe, and I think you can just unmute yourself and one of us might answer it, or we'll make up an interpretive dance as an answer. No takers for an interpretive dance?
So if you like the comfy UI interface, Langflow is similar for language models. So it does similar visual editing for language models.
I really like your idea and I mean your use case of Comfy UI for instructional purposes. But I'm also wondering if the same thing could be used in your assessment when you ask your students to use a similar type of workflow to explain what they have done, etc., for you to assess it. I don't know how art is assessed in an art class, but I'm just wondering if that could be a useful interface for you, like to have it as part of an assessment.
The short answer is yes. So the question for those of you guys, if you couldn't hear that, was the capacity for Comfy UI to add comments on it, nodes and comments and stuff. That's great for like teaching out, but also it could be great for students to mark up their work. Like if they made, say, a custom workflow of their own, they could describe what it is they're doing. The short answer, and then the follow-up was like, yeah, but maybe that's not how artists get assessed in a teaching context. But the short answer is, yeah, absolutely. Like if I had students doing custom workflows and submitting that as the work product, I would encourage them to document as much as they can. I
It really gives higher education is facing that crisis of what, like how to change assessments. And again, I have no background in art assessment, but I think this could be
yeah, I think
incorporated into your assessment arsenal.
it's certainly part of it. What's also, so one of the things I do when I'm teaching, like the last 2, 3 years, I teach a basic intro to digital media class. It's not, it's like, it used to be, 20 years ago, it was like Adobe Creative Cloud. We'll do a section on pixel-based art and Photoshop. We'll do a section on vector art and Illustrator. We'll do a section on, moving, time-based media. We'll do that in Premiere. That was going back 20, 30 years ago. Then what happened is when we started getting the Fab Lab, we started thinking about like, okay, we can make stuff in this box that's a computer, but now we can also do some really interesting outputs, not just like a printout on a little, we could do interesting stuff. So there was sort of a pivot about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, at least in how I do my classes. About 3 years ago, when Dolly first hit the scene, I was like, okay, if I'm going to be relevant to my students about what's happening in the visual art world, we've got to start dealing with AI. And at first, it was just like maybe one project. Now I require AI for all of my projects. It's just like baked in, and we're still doing 3D printing and laser cutting and working with some other tools, but as part of their process. And I have a fairly simple set of rules for how they're allowed to use AI, but one of them is you'll do some studies, you'll do some, sketching and, the equivalent of sketching, but at a certain point, you'll have done the research, you'll have done the preparatory work. What you turn in as the final piece cannot be just straight from AI. You've got to transform it in some significant way. Like you're using the AI as part of your research. It is not the final product. And with art, we're not concerned about the truth. or accuracy, where it's more about kind of an ecstatic truth or um, so I'm not evaluating on technical things so much. I'm really looking at like how far did you take an idea, and you need to be able to talk me through it and tell me about it. So I don't know if that sort of answers your question. I think certainly for myself, I have a clear idea of how I want my students to, where I want them to get with AI. And when I'm assessing them, it's like, is this bullshit? Or have you really extended an idea in some meaningful way that's authentic to you, not just some gray goo that got spit out of a machine? So that's how I think about it. Yes.
Different question.
Uh-huh.
You're starting to get a nice data set that researchers could use. Have you thought about that or curating that? Like if you have these prompts and you have the models that will run against them, and then you have the images, you could start to do research about bias and
Yeah.
all kinds of other things, accuracy, quality, whatever you want about AI, about the different models.
I've been thinking about how to sort of present what it is I'm thinking about, but I don't come from like a science engineering background. So understanding how to formalize that in some way that's useful to any other human being it's just not how I'm wired or how I was, what my domain does. What was important is at least documenting what we're doing in the sense that like we have a GitHub repo that's capturing as much as we can. There's also like trying to get my arms around what are we looking for. There's so much my brain can't keep up with. Like I don't even know what all the models are. There's like so many models. I don't, where do you begin with that? And what I'm at the moment, my bigger concern is setting up a framework or like a sandbox playground, something that then other people can build on top of that and do the kind of research that you're talking about. Um, I personally I'm not quite there. Like there's just too many little bits and pieces that still need to get sorted out. Like I know for my sort of target community, art students and art teachers, even OOD is a little bit of a lift for those guys. It's a bridge to cross. And ultimately, like if we had something that was simpler with just like single sign on to a web page and there's some stuff that surfaced, that would be what I'd like to get to. It's definitely on the sort of the roadmap that I was thinking about early on. But you know, if the university wanted to pay me to do this full time, I would totally do it full time and figure out those problems. This is one of the many projects I've got slotted in on top of teaching, and I'm the digital lab coordinator over at the Corcorran, so I manage about 8 labs plus all the weird specialized stuff that IT doesn't have expertise in, like the laser cutters and things like that. So that's yeah, that's the long answer. Um, I mean, another thing that I've thought about is once we've got enough pieces to show, then I'd love to put up a web page that's just like, hey guys, check out what we've been doing. There's last spring, Heather Stebbins, who teaches electronic music at the Corcoran, had a student who was working on a capstone project and wanted to do AI generated audio. Glenn and company helped me spin up I can't remember which model it was now, but it was through a Gradio interface, and we opened it up so that Heather's student could get in and generate a lot of stuff. And did we capture the student's output? I wish we had. Um, the and I suspect there will be more of that coming. Heather will probably come back to me at some point and be like, can we do that again? How do we, I've got 3 students this year that are kind of like want to do some exploring. Also, interestingly, in music, Douglas Boyce, who's a composer and he teaches composition, he's working with an artist somewhere in the Midwest, and she's basically doing this kind of stuff, but she's doing it on her laptop. And ideally, I'd love to be able to, get her in as an affiliate, and then she's got access to the system and can generate a lot more interesting stuff a lot faster. So their collaboration is she's doing the visuals to go with his music. And yeah, that's, once we've got those things, we could put them on a website and be like, here's the showcase of the interesting intersection of AI, visual arts, RTS and the Corcorran, GW coders, the giant party. So OSPO, So yeah,
Awesome.
there you go.
I missed everything, sorry. I'm gonna see what I gotta go teach. In 15 minutes. Good seeing everybody.
Bye, JP.
Good seeing you upright.
Yeah, I'm walking, sort of. Walking, a form of walking.
So hold up your 3D model again,
Oh,
and then I'm gonna stop recording after,
3D model.
since they got cut off at the beginning of.
Yeah. There's the 3D model. It's for real. Yeah, there we go. This is gonna be like a birthday gift to my lady friend. So her birthday's coming up next week. So
My wife's birthday's today, but she didn't want anything like that. I think that's here. So,
okay. I think that's all I got.
is everyone online?
See y'all.
Yay.